listening, yes? Okay,
Yes.
Yes, we can hear
thank
you.
you. Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Antony. I'm a candidate to the Master of Arts in Language at Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie, Brazil. Besides a researcher and attorney, and also an author on legal innovation, and also a guest professor in Latin American prestigious institutions on related subjects. I'm a member of the International Association of Artificial Intelligence and Law, and also of the Berkeley Center on Discrimination Law and Equality. And today I'm speaking on AI and ethics for ensuring the good of society. I'll just put a timer here so I don't advance in the time. Well, today I'm covering some topics. Firstly, speaking of AI and its peculiarities. Secondly, speaking about possible ways for attaining transparency and building better AI. And thirdly, speaking on the legislative perspectives, EU, UK, United States, and Brazil, briefly, obviously, because of the time. Firstly, let's take a minute to explore the concept of AI. A concept that I find proper is information systems which develop tasks similarly to human intelligence and which have autonomy and are able to learn. And now the applications of AI multiply, and as they multiply and they grow in power and also abundance, it is important to think how to properly develop AI as to cater to ethical and compliance standards and develop AI that is good for humans and for society. The issues that I would like to tackle in this first topic are the black box problems, the automated discrimination, specifically in regard to gender and race, and also the chatbots that are so famous and a hot topic in their hallucinations. Firstly, speaking of the black box, it is basically the inability to understand how an AI-based solution arrives at a decision or recommendation due to the lack of explainability. And the challenges that come along with these are the lack of accountability and transparency, because if I don't know how AI works, I cannot explain either for research, the government, auditing, and compliance, which is the second layer. So as the countries and the regions increasingly move to regulate AI effects, to check if there is compliance to the regulations and those standards, AI needs to be fully comprehensible, if that is possible. And also there is a limitation to innovation due to obscurity, because if I can fully comprehend AI solutions, I cannot see their shadows and I cannot properly see the points for improvement. So I cannot take this AI solution to its best level. Secondly, I would like to speak on automated discrimination. Automated discrimination is the fact that AI can perpetuate patterns of bias and discrimination as humans would do and generate results that are not necessarily better than the ones we would generate. And the challenges that come along with that are the discrimination against minorities. We know that facial recognition using AI has a bias towards Black people. In Brazil, we had many examples of people who were unfairly recognized by AI software, and this leads to unjust criminal prosecution and a lot of bad consequences. Also, we had women in the US and other regions with limited access to credit, education, and employability, even the AI research field, where more human research the field, but less human have access to teaching positions, and also to other work opportunities. We had a case with Apple where the wife of a guy had a credit that was substantially lower than his only for the fact of being a woman. And this all comprehends and encompasses a disrespect of human rights that should not be tolerated, a discrimination against minorities, and also those bad concrete consequences, such as the examples I have mentioned. And now we are in this phrase about chatbots. I put this given here because I think it illustrates properly. People are getting crazy over chatbots, crazy over AI, thinking it will replace humans and so on. And I put here the main competitors in this field: Brett from Google, Transformers from Hugging Face, Roberta from Facebook, GPT-3 and 4 from OpenAI, and Bard from Google. And they all have their advantages and disadvantages, which I will not disclose here fully due to time limitations. But the main thing regarding ChatGPT that is the most famous is that it cannot support other formats than text, which is a limitation comparing to other competitors. But the other competitors sometimes need more time to be wasted in fine-tuning to deliver a proper solution. So each one of them has its own advantages and disadvantages. Speaking of hallucinations, we had some interesting cases. Firstly, Sydney, which was a Bing chatbot that estimated another personality, saying it was locked in a miserable search engine, fantasizing about hacking computers, breaking rules, fabricating a mortal virus, and becoming human. I believe this was disclosed in New York Times to the best of my knowledge, and these led some people crazy because it raises a discussion about the sentience or the absence of sentience of those AI solutions. It also raises questions about if learning from human feedback reinforcement learning from human feedback would be an adequate training model. Bard had another issue where a Google engineer was fired for trying to convince his boss that Lambda was sentient because he reported that the solution had feelings, emotions, and subjective experience, and even offered an attorney to legally represent the solution. And we also have ChatGPT, which is the most famous, that has many issues, such as creating fake references, answers with inaccurate data and information, has a limited knowledge of past facts, has no support to images, sound, or videos, is sensible to adjustments in the phrasing as well. So firstly, may answer that it cannot provide an answer to this specific question, but sometimes when you rephrase it, it can actually provide an answer. So it is not really accurate. And the researchers in the AI lab of the University of Buenos Aires, ZUBA, have recently released a book comparing ChatGPT and GPT-4 and deemed it imperfect by design. Also need to highlight that AI will not replace humans because we have specific traits like understanding and navigating complex specific environments such as the legal system, interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence, and decision-making, because as the chatbots arise, people sometimes get crazy thinking they will replace us, but in fact, we will work together. So professionals need to study AI to proper use those tools. Speaking of ways of attaining transparency, the first one I would like to bring is explainable AI. So we can generate explanations of the AI's models, decision-making process, have more clear understanding of the results and decisions. Some examples, which elements were used to arrive at a result for natural language processing, the features used to make a prediction for predictive AI, and the details of the model's architecture and training data for research. Another way to do that would be with data cleansing and verification, because when you have data cleansing and verification, you can ensure access to a higher quality and higher integrated data for more well-informed decisions and predictions, more data quality and consistency. It can be a way for mitigating bias and improving decision-making, help to adhere to compliance and ethics requirements, and also make it easier to perform audits and to obtain explanations regarding the AI solutions. Also like to highlight the role that the plain language, legal design, and computational language have in here, this in connection with my master's research, because both legal design and plain language are complementary approaches for making law more accessible, usable, and efficient. So legal design is about using design to improve law. Plain language is about improving communication of law. And AI is a heavily regulated subject. So if we make law better, consequently, we make better AI. And language is already linked to AI in the field of computational language for the automatic processing of language. So when we use legal design, such as a better workflow and a better description and thinking of complex concepts, the AI developers can do something more user-friendly and intuitive. And also it can help to simplify the complexity of technical terms and jargon and help users to navigate AI and comprehend the solutions more effectively, leading to more trust and confidence in technology. All of this related to ethics. So you can see that the ethics in AI have intersection with many other fields that are not properly AI itself. Also, there is a role of diversity and inclusion because the teams which develop AI, which work with AI solutions, need to be diverse, whether they are the developers, programmers, linguists, attorneys, and auditors. And as an example, the teams which work with natural language processing rarely have linguists in the team, and it is needed because it is automated processing of language. So you should have a language expert in those teams. Also, it is necessary to have a diverse team in regards to the backgrounds, the perspectives, the experiences, and people themselves, like Black people, LGBT plus people, Latino people, many different people, because they can bring their own perspectives and they can help to identify bias and to see the shadows. And this would lead to more robust and fair AI systems. So it would ensure a higher level of equality and respect to human rights. Speaking a bit of legislative perspectives, I would like to firstly speak on the European Union AI Act because it applies virtually to the whole world. It was first published in April 2021 and updated in May 2023. And maybe you guys are asking, why is he speaking of law? Not only because I'm an attorney, but I'm speaking of law as to highlight how the different regions are dealing with ethics in AI. So the European legislation is complementary to the GDPR, and it was enacted because of the accelerating rate of progress in AI research and deployments. It has an extraterritorial effect, so whenever the output produced by the AI systems is present, this regulation is applicable, and it should have its implementation finished at around mid-2023, so in a few months. It does not regulate AI itself, but instead its effects, and it has a classification into prohibited AI, high-risk AI, and low minimal risk, which was reproduced in the proposed Brazilian regulation. Regarding high risk, it highlights many sensitive areas for AI, like migration, asylum and border control management, law enforcement, administration of justice, biometric identification and categorization of natural persons, and others. And it has a focus on transparency, and it also incentives the launch of regulatory sandboxes, much like the United Kingdom usually does in regard to financial products. It proposes a combination of a local member states AI regulation plus an European-wide AI regulation. And this regulation puts the European Union at the forefront of the global artificial intelligence debate because of the extraterritorial effect to which I referred recently. Speaking of the UK has recently released the UK government's white paper on AI regulation. And this white paper defines AI based on its characteristics. It has a context-specific approach. It is focused on principles to guide the regulator responses to the AI outcomes, and it also enables new functions to support the regulators. So in the case of in UK, what is being proposed is that the current regulators enact this proposed AI regulation, and the enforcement process are currently under development along with a government central risk function. So there would be this complementary approach. And the UK proposed regulation is set upon a framework with 5 principles: safety, security, and robustness, appropriate transparency and explainability, fairness, accountability and governance, contestability, and redress. So the first one has to do with AI being safe and the risk being identified, assessed, and managed. The second one has to do with people knowing when AI is being used and being able to understand its decisions. The third one has to do with AI respecting people's and businesses' rights, avoiding bias and discrimination as an example. The fourth one has to do with accountability and auditing. And the fifth has to do with the ability of contesting a decision that is a result of AI intervention. So as the UK have left the European Union, in any case, businesses and people in the UK will need to balance between the two regulations because of this extraterritorial effect. So the EU regulatory approach will have to be followed in the UK, and there are questionings in the UK if this UK-based regulation wouldn't be overlapping with the European one, as the European one would be applicable in the UK as well. Speaking of the US, the federal government has recently released a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights and with guidelines for the development and the use of AI solutions. And also it was released by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the AI Risk Management Framework. And both documents have the intention of protecting individuals and society from AI-related risks. So the blueprint has key principles to help guide the design and use of AI. And I hope you guys can grasp the similarities because all those regulations are based upon principles are trying to regulate the effects and not the use of AI itself and so on, which is the intention of bringing this comparison here. And in the US, this blueprint provides for 6 tenets of responsible AI: safeguarding human rights, having human oversight and human in the loop approach, having an explainable use of AI, which could be achieved by means of using data cleansing and verification, explainable AI, diverse teams, plain language, legal design, and computational language, to link it all right now, security, safety, and reliability in the AI systems operation, safeguarding of personal privacy, such as personally identifiable information and forbidding the misuse of personal data, and equity and inclusion, which I really find interesting because it provides for machine learning algorithms being trained and updated with fair and diverse data sets to avoid bias and being developed by a diverse team, which is key for having proper and more ethical AI solutions. So I try to bring here the most interesting aspects of everyone, and I believe those regulations are complementary in a sense. And speaking of Brazil, my home country, we have a draft of Brazilian AI Bill of Law that is currently under analysis by the Senate. We had 2 previous AI bills of law proposed at once, but then it was established a Senate committee composed by legal experts, which held public hearings, public consultation. I myself have submitted a contribution as a researcher to that, which was highlighting the final report containing the final version of the law. And it is based on principles. I would like to highlight that the Brazilian proposal regulation heavily draws on the European one and on international experiences. So the principles, such as an example, are centrality of the human person, human participation in the artificial intelligence cycle, and effective human supervision, and transparency, explainability, intelligibility, and auditability. It also focuses on regulating the effects and not the use of AI itself, because it would be impossible, and trying to regulate the use of AI by itself would kill innovation, technology, and businesses. The Brazilian AI Bill of Law has a special highlight for vulnerable groups, such as minorities, elders, and children. It has a focus on non-discrimination and avoiding bias. And it also has other provisions, such as a right to human intervention and contesting AI solutions decisions, which I think really important, especially considering that AI is growing exponentially, is being used in virtually everything, and it is not properly explainable. So it is a chance for people to have a protagonism regarding to decisions that may harm them. It provides for a right to information. It has a focus on assuring the understanding of the decisions made by AI. It also, similarly to what the UK does in regard to financial products, it fosters the development of sandboxes in the future by public agencies and entities. Similarly to the EU regulation, it makes a distinction between excessive risk AI, which is forbidden, and high risk AI solutions. It also provides for the assessment of algorithmic impact for the high-risk AI solutions before they go to markets. It also says that in the future, there should be an AI government authority and that the market can organize itself to build codes of good practices and governance, such as a manifold tiered governance system. And it also provides in the future for a public artificial intelligence database of high-risk AI. I know the People Republic of China has an AI repository, although I don't think it is adequate, because in the case of China, besides the lack of transparency, any public government employee would have access to available information, and there would be a high risk of leaking this information. And also the government would have access to the whole knowledge of AI, which could harm commercial secrets, business secrets, and so on. Intellectual property of the businesses. And just to conclude, because I believe my time is near, the outcomes that I would like to highlight that are important when we think about regulating AI is to foster an ethical use of AI. Firstly, thinking of sanctions that are practical, that are concrete, maybe would be a better word in here, because sometimes the sanctions are only administrative and are not practical. So, oh, thank you. Kelly said we actually do have some extra time if you have more to share. Thank you, Kelly, but I'm just concluding. So it is important that we have practical sanctions, because in many occasions, the sanctions are only administrative. And if the sanctions are only administrative, it is less probable that the companies or the agents that are harming people's rights, that are non-compliant with the regulation and legislation, will cease this undesired conduct. Secondly, it is highly important to have diverse teams regarding to knowledge, background, and people. So in many occasions, speaking more as an attorney than as a researcher, law thinks that it's enough to solve everything. It is not enough, but AI itself is not enough to solve everything. Design teaches us that an interdisciplinary team is key for more adequate and more usable solutions. So there should be diversity regarding to the background, where people come from, their past experiences, and also the knowledges that they have. So ideally, in a same table for the development of AI solutions, there should be attorneys, linguists, AI programmers, AI designers, marketing people, and all the sectors that are involved in this, computer science people, and so on. This is why, as an example, in the US, there is the Codex in Stanford, which is a highly effective lab on innovation because it has a diverse perspective. And this could be an example for the development of AI solutions in the future. Also, it is highly important that the auditing is effective and that it is manifold. Not only the government's auditing, but the private parties having space as well for auditing and auditing obligations, and including attorneys in the equation as well. Because as an example, in Brazil, we have an auto-regulation for publicity, and it works properly, because although it doesn't impose fines for the companies that do not follow this regulation have their reputation harmed. So they follow the regulation to safeguard their reputation, and maybe this would be also useful for AI. It is also important to have a clear disclosure of the use of AI solutions. So in many occasions, let me put this simply, if we, that are researchers, that are people who have access to a bunch of knowledge regarding AI, regulation, and so on, have difficulties to fully understand and to fully think the future scenarios, let us think of the regular people who who do not have this educational background, who maybe in the future will have no access to this information. All this work is focused on them, on safeguarding people's rights, because we should think AI properly, so they do not need to worry about being mistreated, about being harmed, about being disrespected, and so on. So it is especially important to properly develop and disclose when AI is used. And this is why those regulations are important. And those there is a discussion also regarding there should be a specific body to regulate AI or not, because let me give you another example. Here in Brazil with GDPR, we have a Brazilian Data Protection Agency, but we have a consumer protection body, and we have the Public Prosecutor's Office, and sometimes there is an overlapping in the judicial procedures regarding to the violations and also in sanctions. It would not be an ideal scenario where the same company or the same people are sanctioned many times and are prosecuted many times for the same conduct. But it is important that we have proper overseeing of those situations. It is also important, I'm here concluding, to develop truly human-centered AI. Obviously, the development of solutions is highly guided by business perspective, because people want to sell and need to sell. But I truly believe that as we are people speaking to people and people speaking and thinking of people, we can have ethical ways of attaining. It is not about the profit, it is about people. And also we are in this era of ESG, appropriate AI regulation is also ESG desirable. And finally, it is also important that regulation exists where it is needed, so it can safeguard rights, while also not killing technology and innovation. Because I have heard from international experts from both European Union and the US that the overlapping between the GDPR and the EU AI Act is making some companies flee to the US, if I can put it this way, because the US has a more flexible regulation. So European people invest in the US to develop AI. And this is crazy because in the end, the national and the local regulations should not kill businesses, but instead should make room for the businesses to flourish, because in the end, when businesses flourish, the society flourishes as well, and the nation is developed. Thank you so much for your time. Do I have anything else? I don't think so. Oh, sorry. I have two publications on related topics, an article on legal design AI, I put a QR code here, and also participating in a book with a fellow researcher. We have written about AI and automated discrimination focused on gender, if it would be of interest of any of you. And here are the references for the presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kelly.
Okay, thank you so much.
The dispositional function would be somewhat related to the proper function of the object.
Apologies, my headphones just died. Hopefully, can you hear me now? Great, okay, so we'll open it up for questions. If you'd like to go ahead and raise your hand. I had a quick question to get us started. Do you, so you've obviously done a nice overview of all of the different kind of legislative kind of principles and things like that. Do you have one that you favor, or you think that should be used as more of a model for other countries?
Well, thank you for the question, Kelly. It is really interesting. I think that it is not even a matter of option. I believe that the EU regulation will prevail because of practical consequences, especially this extraterritorial effect that I mentioned previously, because EU companies have businesses everywhere else in the world, even in Brazil, Latin America, US, and so on. And I also think that there is a quite clear similarity between the proposed regulations. Some things vary, like we're about to launch a specific body to regulate AI. We're using our already existing structure, but in Brazil, we reflect the EU regulation. The UK regulation is similar to the EU as well. And the US is similar to the EU as well. So I believe that as the EU regulation has started before, it has a natural proeminence, if I can put it this way, and it will guide the discussion. And there will be this overlapping between different regulations. So I believe this will be a true challenge for businesses and for people, because they will not have to comply only with their local regulations, as it already happens in regard to the GDPR, to the data protection. They will need to comply with different legislations. So I think that it is really important, speaking of the legislations themselves, that they are transparent, that they are coherent, and that they are fully explained to people, that they are made understandable, so that people don't get crazy trying to cope with everything and obey to different regulations. Because if they were, I don't believe they are really different, to be honest. But if they were really different, it will lead to legal uncertainty, and it will lead to undesired effects, and it would kill businesses, innovation, technology development, and so on. And I truly believe that the regulatory bodies and the governments do not aim that. I understand that they are trying to safeguard, but it is just to conclude here, it is also interesting because we are trying to mold and trying to regulate a phenomena that we cannot fully see. So we are making assumptions into the future. And it is really common, this situation for law, because things happen and then law runs after them trying to regulate and understand. So this is the scenario I envision for AI now. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Maria, I see your hand up. Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you very much. I thought that was a very interesting overview. And what was really striking for me was that you also highlighted this need for more diverse teams and the inclusion of different perspectives, which is something that I just said for deepfakes. So that was like, I kind of really mirrored it. I was just wondering, how can we achieve that? Because for deepfakes, in the interviews that I led, the developers, they literally said there are no women, or if there are women, then other companies already have hired them. Unfortunately, they're not applying here. So we just can't find any women, for example. They were very diverse from like cultural backgrounds, different continents and all that. But then at the same time, they were all men. They were all between 20 and 40. They were all computer scientists. So not very diverse in that respect. So how can we get these developer teams to be more diverse?
Thank you for your question, Maria. I have also noticed this similarity. It was fun, Kelly, because I don't know if this was done on purpose, but I believe each speech has a connection with each other. It felt like a ladder growing up. Well, Maria, one of the things I believe would work, and this is polemic in the US right now, I don't want to be political here, would be affirmative actions. What we do in Brazil, and also I don't believe affirmative actions should be something eternal, but we have radical and deep inequalities that need to be tackled. So here in Brazil, what we do by force of legislation or by initiative of the companies themselves is that we have a reserve of job positions for Black people, for women, for LGBT plus people. So this is a way of making sure that you will have a diverse people no matter what. And it was interesting what you said regarding the supposed inability to find women to work, because actually we have data proving that we have many women studying and researching AI. And regarding teaching positions in undergraduate and graduate courses and so on, I mean, the higher job positions are not usually offered for women. They are offered for men. So you have women, in fact, that are trained for these positions, but they are not offered these positions. And I believe this has to do with the bias, maybe of the recruiters themselves. So we have these the tale of Narcissus, I believe is the name in English. So we love our mirrors. So maybe this is another question, another issue, because people would tend to choose people who are similar to them. So men hiring men, not women, not Black people, not or Latino, not LGBT plus people, and so on. So for me, this would need to encompass, firstly, a change of culture. because people need to be more open for diversity and inclusion. Secondly, maybe the legislation and businesses initiatives could play a role. So the legislation would oblige this to happen, and the businesses could establish alliances and initiatives to hire more people. Here in Brazil, as an example, we have an initiative by the most prominent law firms to hire more Black people, because we have only a few Black attorneys in those in those Brazilian magic circle law firms, if I can put it this way. And thirdly, besides the legislation and the legislation, businesses, and the change of culture, we could make more room for more diverse people to have access to good quality education in regards to AI, computer science, and related fields. Another example from Brazil, here we have many companies sponsoring programming, computer science, and related topics courses for women. I believe there is a Spanish bank as well that does that in Spain and in Europe, to the best of my knowledge. So I believe those would be ways of doing that. Obviously, pushing change would lead to reaction, and I know that, speaking of the US specifically, Brazil as well, we are in a bit of a political turmoil. So if we do something inclusive, people already read this as political, but in the end, it is not a political thing. It is a human rights thing. And as the AI solutions will affect a diverse multitude of people, it needs diversity in its developing. It needs diversity in the auditing. It needs diversity in the oversight and in the application, because otherwise we will have a blind approach, and this would have bad consequences. I hope I answered you. I hope it made sense.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for your passionate response. I'm definitely going to take some of that into my further research, interviewing more men, probably, because that's what there is to interview.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. And we did try to organize these talks as much as possible, so there was some connection. So I'm glad. It seems like it really worked for this session. I hope we continue with this kind of synergy. We have time for more questions if there's any other, or a speaker. Feel free to either put it in the chat or raise your hand. Jacob, go ahead.
Yes, I just had a quick question. I saw a lot of the things you were talking about in your talk kind of are addressing, decision-making systems, but I didn't hear as much about some of the legal issues people are asking about the large language models, about are they allowed to train on copyrighted data? And maybe I just missed it, but training on copyrighted data, who owns and is responsible for the outputs? Can you be held legally liable if it defames somebody? So how are the different frameworks trying to address these issues? Thank you. Thank you for your talk.
Thank you, Jacob. And I feel it is a pleasure for having you here, because Kelly, I searched for Jacob and I have realized that he's a philosopher, and I was like, oh my God. So thank you so much. It is nice to have not only like tech people and attorneys and so on. Jacob, regarding the matter of copyright, it is a pressing matter, especially because of the chatbots, because they were heavily trained using uncopyrighted data, as you have already put. I didn't, to be honest, find specific disposals or provisions regarding this, because in a sense, the proposed legislations are trying to regulate the facts and not AI itself, and not the peculiarities of it. What I think would be maybe a possible approach would do something as it is done for Spotify, Netflix, and so on, because I believe that it is impossible to restrict which type of data will be used to train, as an example, large language models. So thoughtful proposal would be the following: instead of restricting which data is used for training the AI solutions, maybe a potential solution would be paying a fee whenever the result of the AI intervention resembles an existing thing. So as an example, let's let's think of an AI solution which can create music, I don't know, or images. We have DALL-E, we have many competitors. I'm not mentioning any names. It is not advertising, okay? It's just the companies that came to my mind. So let us think about a solution that could create music or images or so on. So if the image that is created by this AI solution, if the music that is created, the outcome that is created has similarity with an existing thing, if you can properly prove that there is a copyright liaison, an intellectual property liaison, then there should be a payment for the company that developed the original thing, which was used as an inspiration. And also, maybe this could be spontaneous, like, I don't know, the creator of the chatbot, knowing that this would happen, maybe could establish a financial provision, a fund for dealing with those situations that I believe will be common. I have heard from a lawsuit in the US, I guess, touching upon this specific subject. And I believe in the future, regardless of whether the developers of AI solutions will do that or not, the developers of original content will sue the responsibles for the AI solutions. So it may be an inevitable scenario where this will happen in a way or another. And it is one of the million-dollar questions that is presented now. How will we deal with that? Here in Brazil, to conclude this answer, our proposed AI bill of law has a focus on who would be held liable if things do not end well in AI. But not all legislation is like this. So also there is this specificity of how the local legislation will deal with this matter. Because if we consider that a copyright breach or a potential copyright breach is an undesired consequence of the use of AI, maybe it would lead the developers of the AI solution to incur in a sanction set forth by the local legislation. So there would be a multitude of consequences, a lawsuit, an administrative proceeding, maybe the company would be sued. So maybe there is also this possibility that as the framework is developed and as the governance bodies evolve, they create such a framework in which this kind of conduct is refrained. So the developers use copyright data only and not uncopyright data. I hope I answered it. Thank you, Jacob, for your question.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.